Good morning, Washington State. This is Amanda Polly with DBHR through the Healthcare Authority. We're going to go ahead and get started here in about 3 minutes to allow everybody a little bit more time to log in and get started on this beautiful Thursday morning. So hold tight and thank you very much. Okay, good morning. Like I said, this is Amanda Polly, and I'm so glad that everybody's here to join us today. Thank you all for taking your time to spend the day or spend the morning with us and get to know a little bit more about forensic Harps and forensic paths. I am not going to spend very much time doing much more than saying, please welcome Craig Jacobson and Nicole Mims, and they are your program managers for Forensic Harps and Forensic Path, and I am going to go ahead and let this move forward and hand it right on over to Craig. And Craig, why don't you go ahead and get us started? Thank you.
Good morning. So we are going to go over the Trueblood settlement and of contempt. So we're going to go over both the settlement agreement and the contempt kind of broadly, and then also talk about our forensic Harps and forensic path program. So it's myself, Craig Jacobson, and Nicole Mims. So quick overview of me. My name is Craig Jacobson. I'm the program manager for our forensic path program. I've been working in housing and homeless services for about 11 or so years, and I've been with the Healthcare Authority for since February. So Nicole, are you available?
Hi, this is Nicole Mims. and I am the Forensic Harps Program Manager at the Washington State Healthcare Authority. So, first of all, people with mental illness are more likely to be victims of crimes than perpetrators. Over half of male inmates reported experiencing childhood physical trauma. Individuals arrested for minor infractions may spend time in jail, which exacerbates behavioral health symptoms and results in criminal records, making securing a home and/or job much, much harder. The data reveals homeless individuals are more likely to be African American or Native American, live in high-density urban areas, have mental illness and substance use problems, receive medical treatment for injuries, receive cash and/or food assistance. And I know that many of you working in supportive housing programs across the state are probably familiar with the traditional Harps program. And the Forensic Harps program is modeled directly after the traditional Harps program, providing supportive services to people with mental health challenges, as well as substance use and the criminal history piece. And I just also wanted to say that our programs in the Trueblood settlement agreement are different than some of the other Trueblood programs that have been in existence in communities for the last couple years. Those programs are what are called Trueblood contempt fine projects. And these programs that we are talking about today and the other elements related to the settlement agreement are actually different from those other Trueblood programs that some of you may be aware of or maybe even work in. So I know that's confusing. Hopefully through our presentation today, we will answer some of those confusing questions and thoughts about how is this different from existing programs, and we'll definitely have time for questions as well.
Great. So we have a quick little, I'm hoping it starts, quick little overview clip that was put together through DRW, who is the plaintiff in the case. So I'm gonna hopefully get this to play for us, and then we'll check back in. Sorry, I was clicking on the wrong thing.
Hey, Craig, it's Amanda. We can't hear that.
Okay. How do I do audio then?
So there's recently been some struggles with GoToWebinar and videos that just came up this week. So that is that's unfortunate. It would have been really nice to watch this. Is there any, they'll be able to click the link to the video when we send the PDF of the slides through, is that right?
That should work, yeah. So
okay, sorry about that. I didn't mean to put a kink in your presentation there. I guess we just got sorry about that to all of our attendees. This is Amanda. We just got some information recently that GoToWebinar is struggling with videos and embedded links. So that's being taken care of through their IT, which is something that we have no control over.
So, sorry about that. I apologize. So yeah, it's going to come through in the link it gives, or it should hopefully. Now reach out to us and we'll help you figure that out. But it's a good overview of the case history, and so I'll try to do my best to kind of fill you in our next couple of slides about the Trueblood case history. So the initial case is called AB by and through Trueblood versus DSHS. Trueblood is actually not an individual per se, but actually an attorney that's involved with this class action lawsuit. So the court case challenged unconstitutional delays within our competency evaluation restoration process. And so what that means is we had individuals that we were waiting in prisons, and not necessarily prisons, but jails, awaiting their competency evaluations, and it became a unreasonable delay in that process and impacted their ability to have a speedy trial. And so the U.S. Constitution requires Washington State to complete evaluations and admissions within 7 days, which begins when the criminal court signs the order. So regardless of when it is actually sent over to DSHS, the clock starts ticking. So with that, you have a period in which we are hopeful the ideal amount of time someone would be able to get their competency evaluation is in 7 days, but the mandate allows for up to 14 days. And so kind of a quick overview is that the DSHS shall complete in-jail competency evaluations within a shorter period of time. So that 7 to 14 days, which I guess I'm fast forwarding a little bit in the slide, is kind of that in jail or within 14 to 21 days in a more outpatient setting or community-based setting, to my understanding. So what it says here is the U.S. Constitution requires Washington State to complete these admissions within 7 days, beginning when that signs. Sorry, I repeated that. But defendants subsequently can appeal this order from in jail, or appeal that evaluation for in jail. The one thing to kind of take into note is on February 5th, 2018, DSHS and the plaintiff counsel, so the DRW who created that video that we were unfortunately unable to watch, agreed to begin a negotiation for the settlement. And so the settlement is based off of contempt fines that we're racking up as DSHS in the state of Washington. We're kind of unable to resolve this backlog in folks being able to get their evaluations done in jail. So the Federal District Court of Washington, of the Washington District, the Western District of Washington approved the settlement agreement on December 11th, 2018. It's not the settlement of the lawsuit itself, rather it is a settlement of the DSHS contempt status. So the programs that Nicole and I oversee that are rolled out through in various parts of the state are a part of that settlement agreement. So I'm going to just show you a quick graph here that kind of outlines that over the last 6 years, we've had a significant increase in the number of orders being placed for competency evaluations and restoration. So I'm going to pause real quick and see if there are any questions. And so I don't know if you are able to see any questions. I'm not very good at this WebEx stuff yet. So Amanda, are there any questions coming up?
I'm not seeing any questions quite yet. Nothing in the box. So just so the audience knows, if you guys have any questions at all, please make sure that you go down into the question box and type them in there or raise your hand. We'll try to take you off of mute. Go ahead and keep going, Craig.
Okay. So next we have, hopefully it works, sorry. We're looking at a phased approach. And so Nicole will kind of quick touch base on that for us.
Okay, so as you can see, we have a state of Washington, the Washington state map here, and the parts that are in purple are the phase 1 regions where we have begun to roll out the Trueblood settlement agreement programs. So phase 1 consists of Spokane County, as well as these other purple counties, Ferry County, Stevens County, Ponderay, Adams County, and then down in Southwest Washington, Clark County, Skamania County, and Klickitat, and then Pierce County is also in the phase 1 region. And our programs, Forensic Harps and Forensic Path, began working in these regions at the beginning of March this year. So the programs are very, very new. And the phased approach is going to allow us to start small and then grow bigger and bigger. So as you can see, phase 2, which will start in 2021, is King County only. But we are anticipating that we're going to be serving as many people in King County as we are serving in this entire phase 1 region. As you know, King County is quite densely populated, and they have the highest level of competency orders in our state. And so we didn't necessarily want to start there in King County. So we started in these other 3 regions, and then next we will roll out programs and services in King County. And then phase 3 will be, I'm not necessarily sure it will be the entire state, but we will assess and evaluate, and it will be determined what phase 3 looks like, I'm sure, sometime around 2022, late 22 into 23. And so anticipating that much more counties will be coming online over the next few years. So it definitely is a phased approach, and just know that these programs and services are not necessarily offered in every area of the state quite yet. But hopefully we will be able to offer these services across our entire state in the next several years. So definition of a class member, and that's who we're talking about when we're talking about the people that we're serving in the Forensic Harps programs and Forensic Path programs, as well as some of the other programs that are part of our work related to the Trueblood settlement. So the definition is all persons who are now or will be in the future charged with a crime in the state of Washington and are ordered by a court to receive competency evaluation or restoration services through DSHS. So essentially, it's the folks that we were talking about early on who are waiting in jail for an evaluation. So a special certified psychologist is responsible for conducting these evaluations to determine if somebody is competent to basically understand what their charges are and be able to understand the court process. And it's also people whom DSHS has received the court order for. So DSHS is our partner in this work, and they are the oversight agency for people who do those forensic evaluations. So that would be a class member. So it's, as you can see in the slide, it's all persons who are now or will be in the future. So some of the eligibility for our programs is some of the people that we are targeting are pre-arrest services or or jail diversion. So we can, based on somebody's history, we can serve people in our programs to some extent because they have a history of competency evaluations in the recent past, or there are some other eligibility criteria that we'll get into in a little bit when we talk about the specific program.
This is Craig. So one thing I'd also like to add is the definition that we're using for forensic, which you'll see throughout our presentation, is folks that are court involved. So at any point in this court proceeding. So just keep that in mind. I'm gonna kind of do another prompt for questions if anyone has any.
I don't see any questions at all.
Okay.
Thank you.
So forensic harps, and I may have made an incorrect assumption that everybody on the call is familiar with harps, but if you are not, I can give a little bit, it is an acronym, Housing and Recovery Through Peer Services. And as many of you know on the phone who work with this population in various aspects of your work, maybe even some supportive housing providers, maybe even some Harps providers are on the phone. But we know that homelessness is traumatic and cyclical and can be a significant barrier to receiving services, including services for behavioral health conditions. And so the residential supports offered through Forensic Harps connect individuals with housing, with peer support, and some short-term subsidies for costs like application fees, security deposits, and up to a few months of rent vouchers while individuals are helped with finding stable, permanent, safe places to live. And we have trained all of the teams in the Phase 1 region in permanent supportive housing best practices. So they have been trained in that fidelity model and are really taking into consideration the people that they're working with, their choice, and their housing composition. And so we've really worked with them to talk about how important it is for people to be able to choose where they live and the kinds of people they're living with or not living with, and what that looks like is very individual for each person. And like I said, we have contracted with agencies who have, they're part of the mental health, behavioral health community organizations who employ certified peer counselors. And so it is a program requirement that Forensic Harps teams are staffed with 2 certified peer counselors that have lived experience with behavioral health challenges, and some likely have histories with SUD and even homelessness. So that lived experience, as we know, is one of the greatest ways to connect with individuals who have been through some of the same traumatic experiences. The staffing model helps foster engagement and build rapport with people that are served in the Forensic Harps team. And that's one thing, the forensic piece. We're trying to work more to providing, through the Trueblood settlement agreement, providing more technical assistance to jails as well. I don't know that there's many certified peer counselors working in the jail, but there is a movement to train people who are working in the jail so that they are coming from maybe a bit more of a recovery focused place. And so that's another piece of the puzzle or the work that we're doing through the Trueblood settlement. And the goal is to help people enrolled in the program overcome their barriers, become as stable as they can in their recovery, and find and maintain housing of their choice.
Next slide.
No, I see my notes over on my other screen, sorry. And one of the things that I've been encouraging and coaching all of the Forensic Harps teams to do early on when they're working with individuals is connect them to foundational community supports or other supportive type longer term programs in their communities. Because what we know is this Forensic Harps program is about 6 months in length. The subsidies that we have last about 6 months, maybe a little bit longer if somebody finds a reasonably low rent, which, as everybody knows, is really challenging to do and does not often happen. And so one of the things that I've encouraged all the teams to do is to connect people early on when they come into Forensic Harps to foundational community supports, so that when Forensic Harp services end, that these individuals then and can continue to have the housing support or even supported employment support that foundational community supports offers, because it isn't a long-term program. It's intended to be about 6 or so months.
Hey, Nicole, there's a question.
Yeah.
So Karen wants to know if they're able to restore folks back to competency, do they face jail/prison time?
So that's a great question. That's a question that we have been thinking about since we started implementing these programs. And what we don't know how the court is going to act in those cases yet, because the programs are so new. The outpatient competency restoration programs just launched and began accepting referrals July 1st. And so outpatient competency restoration is a brand new program to Washington State, which is also one of the elements of the Trueblood settlement. And so when people are court ordered to participate in that outpatient competency restoration, they're also connected to Forensic Harps for those individuals who have housing needs, which many of them do. And so the teams are connecting folks to housing, helping them with the financial piece of getting into housing, and then a few months of subsidy. Our hope and our goal is to be providing education to the attorneys involved and the courts involved, the judges involved, so that they can see that people can live independently in the community with support and be successfully part of society. And so my hope, my personal hope, is that people will not be restored to competency and then charged for the crime. The hope and the intention of all of us who are working in these programs, I think it's safe for me to speak on their behalf, would be that that's not the intent. The intent is to show that with the support and with connecting people to other resources that they need, and helping them become stable and more solid in their recovery, that the courts will see that as a benefit to the overall communities and then not recharge somebody or have them placed in jail. Does that answer your question? We don't know yet. It's too early to say what's going to happen, but that would be our hope and goal.
So there is more questions. So is it okay if I keep shooting them towards you?
Please do.
Awesome. So, okay. Let me keep going. Here we go. Here's another one. This is for Nicole. Our Trueblood program has been running in our region, including Grays Harbor, where I am, for 3 years. We are interested in forensic, oh, sorry, I lost it. There we go. We are interested in Forensic Harps to help our participants with housing, but we will have to wait for phase 3. But will we have to wait for phase 3 for that resource?
Most likely, yes. And that was I believe, Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the phased approach is legislatively mandated. And so we don't have control per se at our state level to determine which regions of the state are going to get these programs and when.
That's correct. So phase 3 will be, like Nicole said earlier, decided a little bit later after we roll out phase 2, and it's kind of looking at an evaluation of the model and its effectiveness in the 2 phases, and then how does that roll out at a larger scale across the state. So unfortunately, it's kind of a hang tight moment, and so yeah, that's kind of unfortunately where we're at. So hopefully we get to you.
Thank you. Okay, there's a couple more questions, so I'm going to keep on asking if that's okay. So how soon are people referred to forensic Harps prior to release? It can take a very long time to locate housing, so it would would they have housing right away?
That's a great question. So another piece of the Trueblood settlement agreement is putting individuals in the court system who are called forensic navigators. So when a court orders someone into outpatient, well, I take that back. When somebody's competency is brought into question, a forensic navigator is assigned to that person. A forensic navigator is kind of a high-level case manager of individuals who are ordered into outpatient competency restoration. And also they may interview and work with some individuals who are not ordered into outpatient competency restoration for whatever reason, to get them connected to other services and programs. And so the forensic Harps teams are intimately working with the forensic navigators in each of these phase 1 regions, so that when it is determined that someone's competency has come into question, and it's likely based on the charges, because outpatient competency restoration is really only appropriate for certain individuals who meet a clinical appropriateness. They have to be screened for clinical appropriateness. They have to be assessed based on their history. Are they appropriate for OCRP? And that's our abbreviation for outpatient competency restoration. So when the forensic navigators have a pretty good indication based on the person's charges and that they've been ordered for that competency evaluation, they are referring to forensic Harps in that moment. So due to COVID, unfortunately, some of the jails have been reluctant and hesitant to let the forensic Harps teams in the jails to do assessments. But that ultimately is the model. The model would be that a housing specialist or a certified peer counselor would go into the jail and meet with the person, start building a relationship, start building rapport, start talking about what their housing kind of needs and wants are. And most often, coming right out of jail, the teams have built relationships with actually a multitude of motels in their area. And so immediately upon release from jail, most people are being placed in a short-term motel stay so that they can be out in the community, they can get to their OCRP treatment and other outpatient mental health or substance abuse or whatever other services they have. And Forensic Harps is key in kind of connecting people to all those other services and resources as well. So initially, upon release from jail, folks are going into a motel, and then the Forensic Harps teams are working with them to work on a more stable housing, more permanent plan with them. The other thing I can say is that people can also, if they have a family member or a friend, they can choose to, and that family member or friend is willing to house the person who's eligible for forensic harps rent a room or something like that. The teams can also use the short-term housing subsidies to pay a family member or a friend to house individuals, either short-term or longer-term, if that is a permanent placement for somebody.
Okay, there's a couple more.
Sure.
You guys are doing a great job at answering questions. Now we're getting littered with them. Okay. So, okay, so the next one is there anything in the contract to state a referral/connection must be made to housing and employment services outside of the program to encourage connection to foundational community support?
100% yes. The contract language has, I think it mentions foundational community supports at least twice, if not 3 times. So linkages and connections to other longer term supports is absolutely required contractually. So yes.
Fantastic. Excuse me. And then is Harp statewide?
So again, it's a phased approach. Currently, we are in the phase 1 implementation plan began early 2020. So the teams received their contracts, I think it was February 2020. Their teams were fully staffed by March. And those phase 1 regions are Pierce County, Spokane region, which is actually 6 counties in the upper right corner of our state, and then Southwest Washington, which encompasses 3 counties across the bottom of the state, Clark, Skamania, and Klickitat. So it is not statewide yet, and our hope and our intent is that eventually we will be statewide, but the legislation kind of mandates the way that we are implementing programs in different parts of the state.
And another thing to point out that the traditional Harps programs are across the state, and Amanda, and then it's a part of the foundational community supports, and I think Amanda would be able to get you any information that you need about it and how, if it's not in your community, how to better or how to get it started. Is that correct, Amanda?
It is correct. So yes, if you're curious about getting FCS started in your community, whether it's Eastern Washington or Western Washington or Central Washington, you just reach out to me. My email will be connected in the follow-up email after this webinar is finished, and I can get you connected to the correct resources in order to get you started. We can even have just a phone call conversation and talk about if you feel like that's right for your community. And if you have people who are experiencing homelessness and mental health symptoms, then there's probably a really good chance that it's right for your community.
So I'm going to move us on to our next slide, which may answer some other questions coming up, but I can't actually see the questions, but I'm going to move us on to the forensic Harps eligibility. And I think Nicole has touched on some of it, but maybe there's more we can learn.
I want to make sure that Wanda made a comment in the box, and I think that she has a really valid point that before we say goodbye today, and we do have quite a bit of time before that happens, that it would be a really great idea that we make sure, or that you make sure, please, that our listeners know the difference between traditional harps and forensic harps, just for their knowledge, if that's okay, please.
Absolutely, that's a great idea. You said that was Wanda's idea?
That was totally Wanda's idea.
Thanks, Wanda. So, as you can see, there's a lot going on this slide regarding forensic harps eligibility. So, individuals who have a court order for outpatient competency restoration are kind of our main one of the main priorities to serve in forensic harps. So individuals ordered into outpatient competency restoration who are referred by a forensic navigator, or individuals who are on the Research and Data Analysis, RDA, referral list, receiving forensic path services, which Craig is going to give lots of information and explanations about what that RDA referral list is and who is on it and what the programs are doing in regards to forensic path. So if individuals are eligible for forensic path, then the expectation is that when the forensic path teams make connections with those folks, they are referring to forensic harps, which is again another priority population to serve for forensic harps teams. If someone is exiting a crisis triage stabilization facility and meet certain eligibility criteria, and that eligibility criteria is that they have had at least one prior contact with the forensic mental health system in the past 24 months. And really what that means is, do they have a criminal history? Is it within the last 24 months? And they have a mental health diagnosis or co-occurring diagnosis, they are eligible for some short-term funding coming out of the crisis stab facility. And again, the expectation, we're also working closely with crisis stabilization facilities so that they are connecting individuals that they place in short-term motel with motel vouchers, that those individuals are also connected to forensic harps. And so those are kind of the three main referral sources for forensic harps. Like I was saying earlier, we are trying to target people before they become class members. And so if someone is brought to a crisis stabilization facility via arrest diversion, jail diversion, like say a co-deployed team, a mental health professional working with a police officer, encounters somebody and they realize, you know, this person's probably acting out is more related to acting out. I used quote unquote air quotes, but you can't see me. Their behaviors essentially are likely a result of a mental health diagnosis. And so instead of going to jail, people can be taken to a crisis stabilization facility for treatment and services. So when someone was to stabilize at a crisis stab facility, once they would be discharged, then they could be referred to and eligible for longer term housing supports in forensic harps. And then individuals who need assistance accessing independent living options and who would benefit from a short-term housing assistance beyond. And the 14-day vouchers are what the crisis stabilization facilities are contracted to provide to eligible individuals. So there are 5 crisis stabilization facilities in the phase 1 regions who are contracted with those short-term housing vouchers so that they can offer someone a place to go. And again, usually a motel coming out of a crisis stabilization facility. But that same day that they're discharged or even prior, the expectation is that those individuals are referred to forensic harps so that they could have more support and connection to more permanent housing. And people must have a mental health or a behavioral health diagnosis and are assessed to need housing support beyond what's offered through that crisis stabilization voucher. And I think I already said that. And obviously people need to be, they don't have to meet HUD's homeless definition. They can be couch surfing, they could be doubled up, they could be unstably housed or experiencing homelessness and be eligible for forensic harps. Next slide. Steve.
Our next slide is me. And so again, Craig Jacobson, and I'm the program manager for the Forensic Path program. So kind of again, a reminder, we're kind of still rolling out in our phase 1 regions. And then we'll be building out from there with phase 2 and then hopefully more from there. So the Forensic Path program is a outreach program that works to connect individuals who our settlement agreement, excuse me, would refer to as high utilizers. So it's a part of the Trueblood settlement. It uses state funding to enhance outreach and engagement programs to connect identified people or individuals with services. So we already had Nicole refer to something called the list. I'll go through that in a moment, but the Forensic Path teams are kind of tasked with outreaching and engaging these individuals that have been identified as probably needing some more support. So our settlement agreement uses the less friendly term of high utilizer. So when we're talking about that term, we're not necessarily, you guys may be familiar with that and thinking, you know, somebody who's got maybe more ER visits or police contact or somebody that's homeless. And that's not exactly what is being referred to in the settlement agreement. So what the settlement agreement is looking at is individuals who have been referred to 2 or more competency evaluations in the past 24 months. So DSHS's RDA, so Research Data Analysis team, has kind of figured out a way to comb over the multiple systems they have that touch on forensic mental health, Provider One, various data sources, for the best words, and they have figured out a way to try to identify folks that have had 2 or more of these evaluations. So it could be a referral to a competency hearing, it could be a competency hearing, but somewhere in that process. And so within the last 24 months. And so the goal is to try to get people out of the system. And so hopefully not have them have a 3rd or an additional competency evaluation referral. So if you're not familiar with a PATH program is a SAMHSA funded program. It is a tradition, so I'm gonna speak real quickly on a traditional PATH program. PATH stands for the Project in the Assistance and Transitions from Homelessness. It's an assertive outreach program that works to identify people that are chronically homeless and working with or living with a behavioral health condition and trying to help them get linked up to resources, ideally housing, but we know that's a limited resource, to get them out of a homeless system and into a system of care that will help them in their recovery. So when we're the Forensic Path program, one thing worth noting is it's not necessarily folks on this list that are people on this list are not necessarily homeless. They may also be experiencing housing instability, or they may actually have a home and just haven't had the best success with kind of the behavioral health system or accessing resources to be diverted away from our criminal justice system. So we build upon that assertive outreach model within a traditional PATH program and use it to outreach and engage individuals on this referral list. So I'm going to pause so I can take a breath, but also, are there any questions so far?
So there's a couple questions. 2 from Diana. I hope I said your name right. Are there people outside of their service areas able to receive these services if they transfer over? Are there any forensic programs statewide, pathwise? And Fozzie wanted to know, are there any charges or behaviors relating to mental health that would disqualify someone from Harps, I'm assuming forensic Harps, besides high-level violent crime?
Nicole, do you want to take the Harp one real quick?
Sure. So the answer is no. There are no disqualifying crimes. So the teams are expected to work with people who definitely have a criminal history. I've worked with them quite a bit, and it sounds like their community mental health agencies kind of as a whole do a lot or some work regarding safe outreach and engagement and working with individuals who have maybe a criminal history that raises eyebrows or might make some people feel uncomfortable. And so those situations, the teams are always encouraged to work in pairs. And so people are never, ever, ever expected to serve individuals on a one-on-one basis that they don't feel comfortable doing that with. And so we encourage and support the teams going in pairs when that happens. And I think even, you know, I have some of my past histories working on traditional path teams. And there were even times that, you know, going into certain areas or encampments or whatnot, you have police backup, and they're not there to engage or do anything else except make sure that the situation is safe for everybody. So I hope that answers your question.
And then Amanda, can you go over the questions that were more path related real quick again?
Yes, no problem. Oh, there's, and it looks like we have one more. So the ones from Diana are the people outside of their service areas able to receive these services if they transfer over? That's the first question.
Okay.
The second question is, are any of the forensic programs statewide? But I think you guys already answered that with not yet, right?
So yeah, that is a correct answer. It's not yet. There may be contempt fine projects that do similar or outreach populations in your community. So these projects are actually part of the settlement agreement. So kind of as Nicole mentioned early on, that the settlement agreement kind of addresses the contempt fines and are not quite being caught up on being able to provide the services that are needed to help get folks out of this waiting process. And so as a way to kind of mitigate these contempt fines, there's the contempt fine projects, as well as some of those fines, I believe, are helping to pay for the settlement agreement. So as far as location goes, there is that issue with we're rolling it out in phase 1 and then in phase 2. But I think you'd kind of, if somebody were to transfer areas, if life took them to one of these areas, yes, they would be eligible for services as long as they showed up on this list. And so there is a statewide list, but right now we focus on the individuals that are in our phase 1 regions. And so, you know, again, Pierce County, and then our southwest is Clark, Skamania, Klickitat, and then over in Spokane, which is almost the whole northeast corner of our state, which being Spokane County, Adams, Lincoln, Pend Oreille, Stevens, and Ferry County. So, but as you know, as a former provider, I would love to see these rolled out further. It's just going to take time to get there. So,
for sure. So there's another question. Is there any information on the forensic peer certification course? I was involved in the coursebook work group and was told I would be able to take the course due to being involved in the development, even though I am not in a phase 1 region. But COVID happened. Is the course still on hold?
So to my understanding, we are rolling it out and it's going to be available eventually statewide. I would not be the best to get you that information or give you that information in this moment because I don't want to say it wrong, but we can also get that information out to the group.
Do you have your contact information available at the end of the slide, Craig?
Maybe, might be on a slide. If not, I can definitely get it. I can't remember what the last slide is, and I don't want to fast forward. And I'm still learning this PowerPoint process.
So if it's not available, what I'll do is I'll add it into the follow-up email and individuals can reach out to you about questions about forensic harps and paths in their areas, both of you, and then go from there if they would like. Is that okay?
Perfectly great.
Wonderful, thank you.
And I'm going to answer for Nicole yes on that as well. So, I'm going to move forward, and then of course we can stop whenever for questions. But kind of let's see, come on. I thought I was going to move forward. There we go. So all of our teams are within 4 behavioral health or community behavioral health agencies across the state. So in Southwest, we work with Community Services Northwest. They're a part of CMAR. In Pierce County, we work with Comprehensive Mental Health, I think formerly known as Comprehensive Life Resources, as well as Greater Lakes Mental Health. And then over in our Spokane region, we work with Frontier Behavioral Health. So each one of these teams, there are usually about 4 to 5 individuals, include a certified peer. Some of them have more than one. And they're a multidisciplinary team that has experience working in behavioral health, substance use, as well as homeless services. And so they're kind of building on that life experience and using that to help build relationships with individuals and help them to connect with supports, including housing, transportation, healthcare services, to include in that behavioral health, foundational community supports, things that'll just, in theory or in practice, help them get further along and more stable and diverted from our criminal court system. So forensic, like I said, they're contracted with the different community partners, and each month they get a list through RDA of individuals that have been identified for services. So these teams take the information that is available, sometimes it's a last known address, a mailing address, phone numbers, and they try to go out and find these folks. And they may, for someone who is experiencing homelessness, go to encampments or shelters that they've already been going to. All of our providers actually have a traditional path program, so they're all familiar with homeless outreach and meeting people where they are at. And so it's just a little bit more unique in that it is targeting specific people. Sometimes they're able to reference their HMIS system, their own clinical records, jail rosters, et cetera, just to kind of find and locate these people that need additional help. And so our goal is to not duplicate any services that might be offered by a Medicaid, Medicare benefit. And if they do have a benefit like that, helping them get reconnected to those services that they're already, may have been engaged in. So one thing to keep in mind is they are not bound to refer to the agency they work for. They're going to want to refer to the place that's going to allow the individual to be most successful. And so sometimes in our more rural areas, it's finding a provider that's maybe within the county public health system or a smaller behavioral health organization out there. So it's not only just an outreach program, but a case management program, and they work to help people overcome those barriers. And so to getting the behavioral health and community supports that they need. The approximate participation in the program is about 6 months. If somebody needs additional support past that 6 months, it's going to be a case-by-case thing, but our goal is ultimately to get someone out of the criminal court system. So when appropriate, we may be able to provide some housing support. So it may be helping with housing stability once they get a subsidy and are able to be prior to getting connected to foundational community supports. It may be helping them figure out transportation system or assistance. So each of the teams have some client service dollars. It's a limited amount, and they have some freedom to help with, maybe buying a grocery cart so somebody can eat, or getting a motel voucher so they can make it to their early morning appointment But it is limited in the amount of money that is available, so it's not an endless resource. And so teams have been encouraged to be creative. You know, and I know one thing from my provider, former provider hat was hearing that money is available. And it is true that money is available, but it is earmarked specifically for these folks that are on this referral list. And so unfortunately, if you are a provider in one of these phase 1 regions and you're saying, hey, they got money, it unfortunately may not be available to the person you're working with. So kind of what I'm going to move to next is something both me and Nicole have kind of talked about throughout, but we're really encouraging our providers that are providing Harps and FPath services to help them get connected, get eligible people connected to forensic, or not, sorry, I've been using the word F for forensic, but foundational community support services. So supported housing, supportive employment, helping them. Again, our goal is to get folks stable and out of the criminal court system, and helping them in their recovery and living towards their best life. And so I'm going to again take a breath, but also ask if there's any questions.
Why, there is, so breathe quickly. So thank you. Okay, Craig, so Teresa wants to know, when will the Forensic Harps and Path teams be reaching out to foundational community support programs and making referrals? Because it looks like there's quite a few referral coordinators information that is available for some regions in Washington for you guys.
I don't have a timeline. A lot of our providers do have a foundational community support program within their portfolio of care, but I would be happy to try to collect that information or have Amanda help me get that information and get it out to our providers, because some of them may not know what's outside of their own building, and we're encouraging them to network. But again, they're pretty new programs, and so and then everything kind of got a little delayed in our rollout because of COVID. So
I'd say for
what's that, Nicole?
I was just going to say that I know individuals have already been connected to foundational community supports that have also been served in Forensic Harps. So those teams have already begun making those connections and enrolling folks in foundational community supports.
You know what? Just to back you up on that, we have somebody in the chat box that just said we've made several referrals to FCS. So that's good to hear too. Not just from you, Nicole, but actually from people who are listening in the audience. There's another comment in here. It says, pardon me, since FCS doesn't accept individuals who don't have Medicaid, how are the programs addressing this gap during the referrals process while they're trying to get people connected to Medicaid?
That's a great question.
So, and I can say from the referral list, each BHASO is provided with, has the ability, because of contempt fines, to help. I don't know if it's exactly contempt fines, but they are given some dollars through Trueblood in their contract with HCA to help work with individuals, at least in the forensic path world, who are on this list, who may not have that Medicaid dollars right away. And so, but I think it's something we're still figuring out, and I hope I didn't misspeak.
No, I think that you're right, and I know that addressing those very basic needs with folks, like making sure that they're connected to benefits and food resources, is definitely something that the teams are doing. But you're absolutely right. In order to be eligible for foundational community supports, people have got to be active in Medicaid. And so I haven't heard from any of the teams that they're running into that problem, but it's definitely something that I'll keep on my radar.
Any other questions?
Nope, that was it.
Okay. So our next slide is a kind of, again, a review of who our providers are in the phase 1 regions. We, like I said, for the Forensic Harps teams, we are looking at Frontier Behavioral Health in the Spokane region. Within the Pierce County region, we have Metropolitan Development Council, as well as Comprehensive Life Resources. And then down in Southwest, we have Columbia River Mental Health. And so, and then for Forensic Path, we have a little bit of an overlap with some of them, and that for our Forensic Path teams, we have in Spokane, we have Frontier Behavioral Health, and in Pierce County, we have Greater Lakes Mental Health Care, as well as Comprehensive Life Resources. So we have that overlap with Comprehensive. And then down in the Southwest region, we have Community Services Northwest, CMAR. One thing to keep in mind is the teams, or all the programs that are settlement agreement projects, meet on a monthly or bi-weekly basis even, to kind of do a meet and greet, but also to coordinate care. And so we try to keep all of our elements connected to one another, because ultimately between all the goals, and I think even Nicole has said this throughout, our goal is to kind of divert folks from this program and make them successful. So our next slide says everything we've been asking throughout, but any final questions?
And I can, if it's a good time, kind of give a specific breakdown of the difference between traditional harps and forensic harps. If that would be helpful, Amanda, do you want me to do that now?
I feel like that's a great idea. We don't have any questions coming through, and you definitely have some time. So
Okay.
if you don't mind, I would love to see or hear about the differences between traditional harps and forensic harps.
So traditional harps, and the traditional harps teams are in existence across the entire state. These programs are specifically for individuals who are being discharged from a behavioral health facility. So either Western State Hospital, Eastern State Hospital, any evaluation and treatment center across our state, as well as substance use treatment facilities. So prior to coming to the Washington State Health Care Authority, I was actually overseeing a traditional harps program in Pierce County. And so part of what we would do is go into Western State Hospital when we got referrals from their discharge coordinators, and try to start planning with people about their housing when they were ready for discharge. And so the idea is that either a housing specialist or a certified peer counselor would go into a facility and start that planning regarding housing prior to somebody being discharged from that facility. Also would go into various evaluation and treatment centers, doing the same thing, trying to work with folks. And then individuals can also be experiencing homelessness and quote unquote at risk of hospitalization for either mental health or SUD inpatient treatment. And so lots of the referrals to the forensic harps team, the traditional harps team, when I was working on that, would come from SUD inpatient treatment. The shelters would refer people who were really struggling to maintain because of their mental health or their severe substance use barriers. And so that's kind of the population of folks that we served in traditional Harps. Traditional Harps is a much shorter program. Well, it's about half. That program is usually about 3 months in length, and the financial assistance or subsidy that traditional Harps offers is about $1,500 per person. And then forensic Harps, when we're looking at the eligibility for forensic Harps, and I'm going to go back to my slide on my other screen to make sure I don't miss anything. Forensic Harps is really targeted to people who not only have the behavioral health diagnosis and barrier, but they also have the criminal court involvement. And so if someone has a criminal history that's within the past 2 years, and they're unstably housed or experiencing homelessness, those are the individuals who would be eligible for forensic Harps. Now I say that because there's a caveat, and the caveat is forensic Harps teams always have to make sure that they have capacity to serve the priority population. And that priority population is people ordered into OCRP, people who are on that RDA referral list and have been served or referred by someone on a forensic path team, or people who are exiting the crisis triage stabilization facility. And they've been exited with a short-term voucher, usually in a motel, and who are also connected to forensic Harps for some ongoing support. And so that, keeping in mind that community-based agencies in these phase 1 regions can refer people to the forensic Harps teams. Say an outpatient case manager at a community behavioral health agency had someone who was experiencing homelessness, definitely has a mental health and or SUD disorder, and is also has that criminal history within the last 2 years. If they make a referral to forensic Harps, although they meet the eligibility criteria, the forensic Harps teams may not be able to accept referrals at any given time based on their capacity. So each of the teams, traditional Harps and forensic Harps, we try to encourage the teams to keep a, I'm not going to say it's a caseload that meets fidelity, because they are not held to the permanent supportive housing fidelity standards. But we don't want them having caseloads that are so big that they can't meet the needs of the people that they're serving. And so currently the forensic Harps teams are operating with caseloads about 19 to 22. And that's pretty, they're at capacity. And so just know that there's that piece of their work that they're having to prioritize referrals that come to them, because we always want to be able to serve someone that's ordered into OCRP or that's referred from forensic path or that has been placed in a short-term motel by a crisis stabilization facility. And the forensic Harps teams have a little bit deeper of a subsidy. They have about 6 months worth of support, which their subsidy amount also has been authorized, for lack of a better way to explain it, by our legislature, and they're eligible for $1,200 a month. So they have quite a bit more funding that they're eligible to use. And what we have done is work with the forensic Harps team so that if someone is in a, say, a shared living situation or a recovery residence or Oxford House, and their rent might be $600 a month, the forensic Harps teams can stretch their subsidy and support for 12 months in that situation, if that makes sense. Any questions? Or if Wanda's out there, is Wanda giving us any information that I missed?
Actually, Wanda hasn't said anything, so I think that's a good sign. And there haven't been any additional questions. And I also view that as a good sign, because that means people are picking up what they need. Just from what you're saying, I'm learning a lot, and I've been listening for like a year now. So this is great. You know, is there anything else that you would like to cover? Like maybe if there's any curiosity behind the referral process from, you know, when somebody might be ready to go from your forensic program over to FCS, or the transition from PATH or forensic PATH to forensic Harps to the FCS program. Is there any like last minute advice or clues or anything that you'd like to give to anybody that has, you know, you think would work best, or anything like that?
I would just say that what we're learning and what I've known by doing the work for a long time in the community is building those relationships with your partner agencies that are doing similar work or serving individuals who may also be eligible for your programs. We're being very intentional right now about our and it's contractually obligated. Each of these teams, Forensic PATH, Forensic Harps, OCRP, the Forensic Navigators are on board. We're being very, very intentional about having structured, regularly scheduled meetings to talk about things as they're happening, when they come up. And so I think that if I could encourage anything, it would be getting to know your partners at the other agencies in your community. And that's kind of a, yeah, duh, we do that. We're social workers. We have to know all the resources, but really having some solid relationships with those other community partners, I think is the best thing we can do to help the people we serve.
Yeah, I think Nicole has it right. You know, we're working on connecting folks to the resources and learning more about the resources as they come up. Our next slide, it'll also be included in the slide deck, and that's probably where you'll get more information or find it more useful, because I'm not going to click on the links because we're not going to read this together. So this is the settlement agreement. It kind of talks about all the Trueblood settlement agreement projects, or the element projects, so forensic Harps and forensic PATH being two of them. Some information about the Senate bill that helps to kind of bring it all together, as well as our final implementation plan for phase 1. So that's a good spot for some of the more information. And we have another slide that talks about the jail technical assistance. Oh gosh, they're scrolling through real quick. Workforce development. And then if you want more information, a link to our listserv. And so I think, oh, we do have a slide with our contact information. And so both of us are available for questions. If it makes more sense to talk on the phone, just let us know and we'll set up a call. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it. I'm not going to hold you for another 10 minutes. I don't like being held captive. So
that's awesome.
I'll set you free. Enjoy your 10 minutes. Grab a coffee. You know, take a walk. Breathe. But again, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Yeah. Any last words, Nicole?
No, I'm grateful to be able to share the work that we're doing. And like Craig said, if there's any questions at all, feel free to shoot us an email. And if you'd rather talk on the phone, we're happy to do that too. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you've got questions or comments or really anything at all. So thank you for your time.
Thank you both very much. We really, really appreciate you. We'll make sure, Washington, thank you very much for tuning in and listening today to your monthly housing topical webinar. Thank you. I have words on this Thursday and we will use them effectively. So don't forget to tune in next month. We will be sending out the information for our topical along with the follow-up to this one. Craig and Nicole will make sure to give me any additional information that's necessary outside of the PDF, and you will make sure that to reach out to your Forensic Harps and Forensic Path program managers in case you have any questions. And I hope everybody has a safe and healthy weekend. Please take care, and remember, for all of your housing needs, we are here. We'll talk to you guys very soon. Thank you, everybody, and please be safe.
Thank you.